Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and today I am doing 2 tags for the price of 1. So I have been in the past couple of months tagged by 2 different channels to do 2 different library tags. So I figured I'd combine them into one video and answer the questions. There is a tiny bit of overlap, but honestly, they both ask kind of different questions. So let's get started. First of all, I was tagged in the library tag by Reading Ideas, so thank you for that. And the original tag was created by BookBuds, and they have a fun channel if you have never seen theirs. So go check out both of those channels. So question number 1 for their library tag is, how often do you go to the library? And currently in my life, I don't go very often. I almost exclusively go to either pick up books that I have reserved that have come in or to drop off books that are due. So I don't really spend any amount of time in the library. And that is like a couple times a month maybe that I do that. Currently, that's about the state of things. Question number 2. Do you belong to more than one library system? And why, yes, indeed I do. So I live in one county and I work in another county, but regardless, both of those counties are reciprocal. So if you have a card in one library system, you can get the card in the other library system just by virtue of the fact that you already have the one. So now it's not reciprocal in the sense I can't use one county's card at the other county system. I have to actually get the card, but you don't have to live there or work, whatever. They're just reciprocal. So I do have 2 system library cards, which is nice because it's not a big library, but there is a library just literally down the street from where I work. So it's very conveniently located. Number 3, what percent of books that you read come from the library? Not a very high percentage, especially if we're talking physical books. 10% at the most, probably, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less, give or take. As far as digital books, it used to be a lot more, but still, I would say maybe 20 to 30%-ish. I used to have a 10 book online limit at Hoopla of ebooks and audiobooks, and I rarely ever got to that limit. And even if I did reach that limit of checking out that many books, it wasn't necessarily books I was reading. It was just like for research, or like I tried a book but didn't finish it, whatever, you know what I mean? Or checked out books for my kids or something like that. So yeah, 2, probably my highest rate of usage would be 2 or 3 books from the library that I borrow per month. Number 4, do you listen to audiobooks or get ebooks from the library? And there's a similar question on the other tag, so I'll answer that at the same time. And that is, do you check out DVDs, audiobooks, etc.? So basically the same question. In short, yes, I do check out items besides physical books. And I always have. When I was growing up, our library had CDs, you know, those round, shiny little discs that you had to slide into the player. Yeah, that ancient technology. They used to have an extensive CD collection. So I would always get my CDs from there because I couldn't afford to buy CDs and there weren't any streaming services at that point. So yeah, definitely checked out a lot of CDs at the library when I was growing up. We also occasionally would check out movies from the library, but that wasn't as common. Back then there were no audiobooks or ebooks. I mean, I guess they probably, well, okay. When I was very little, back in the 20th century, you know, I would check out books on tape. That is how old I am, folks. Books on tape. And then it would make the little sound when you had to turn the page for like early readers or beginning readers or non-readers, you know, those like picture books. Anyway, so yeah, I would check out books on tape when I was very little. Like I remember like Curious George, reading Curious George like that, and some other of those children's books. Good times. Anyways, so yes, from my childhood. I have checked out other media from the libraries. I currently probably use Hoopla and to a lesser extent Libby more than I do actual physical books from the library. So definitely. And my library does offer several services for checking out digital movies. Like I was just noticing today, they have like a Hallmark Now binge pass or something where you can check out Hallmark movies and stuff like that. I have not availed myself of those services because whenever I have gone to look for a particular movie, they have not had a movie that I wanted to watch, like a specific movie that I'm looking for. I've never just like browsed the movie selection to see if there's one I'm interested in watching. So when the kids were younger, we would check out movies, like actual DVDs from the library more frequently. Because, back 10, 15 years ago, that was a more common method of watching a movie than it is now. Now it's mostly streaming. But I haven't really done a lot of the library movie streaming yet because their selection isn't that great. Audiobooks. I don't listen to audiobooks hardly ever. I only listen to an audiobook if that's the only way I have access to a book that I don't want to purchase for myself. And that happens occasionally, but I dislike it. I don't like listening to audiobooks. We will listen to audiobooks when we are on long road trips. So as a family, we will listen to, sometimes I'll try to find something that correlates to where we're going on our road trip, if I can, but sometimes it's just interesting books that we listen to. Question number 5. Did you go to story time at the library as a kid? And I do not remember doing that. Nope. Question number 6. Have you ever borrowed a movie or a video game from the library? I feel like I just talked about that. Video games, no. Movies we discussed. Question number 7. Have you ever gotten fined for returning books late? What kind of question is that? If so, how do you feel about that? Okay, so yes, I have been fined for returning books late. Mostly, I believe, from the library system in Maryland when I lived there as a young married, new adult, whatever, in my late 20s. A few times. And then a little bit more, or no, actually it would have been before then, at one of the library systems in Virginia that did fine. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I did not enjoy that, actually, because at that point, the reason I was checking out books at all from the library was so that I didn't have to buy them myself. The whole point was to be saving money, right? But then when you have a hefty fine that you have to pay before you can check out more books, it kind of like negates the whole purpose. So yeah, I didn't feel great about that. But then the county that I am in does not and has not for a long time charged any fines or fees for returning books late. They do have a whole process, and I think you have to pay like a replacement fee or I think they call it a replacement fee or something if you neglect, like if you go a certain point past the due date, but I've never actually had to do that. So let's see. Question number 8. Do you attend special events at the library, like or groups at the library, or book sales? I did more so when my kids were younger. We would attend various library events just for something to do, especially during the summer or when they were very small and I needed activities to just something to do during the day other than just staying at home all the time. But it's been a long time since I have done any kind of event at the library. Book sales, absolutely. If I know of one in the area within driving distance and it's on a day that I'm available, absolutely, you will find me there. Question number 9. Have you ever given or taken a book from a little free library? Why, yes, I have a video about that, so I can share that video with you all and you can see that. Or a book box or a book swap. So I don't know about a book box, but definitely a book swap I have done on more than one occasion. Most recently, my wrap-up video from Sunday, will show a little bit of a book swap that I did with some fellow booktubers and subscribers in the area. And that was on Saturday. So that was a lot of fun. We swapped some books there. So that's always fun when you can offload some books and then get ones that you are interested in or want to try without spending any money. So that's fun. And then 10, bonus question, does your librarian know you by name? And no. And I don't know my librarians by name either. There's enough of a staff at my libraries that I go to that I wouldn't recognize them. Growing up, totally different story, because my next door neighbor, the lady who lived right next door, she was one of the librarians. So yes, we knew her by name and she knew us by name. Also, my oldest sisters worked as library pages throughout high school. And I think they started by volunteering and then they were paid. And so yes, that we got to know all the librarians in the library where I grew up. But nowadays, no. Okay, so what's interesting is this tag has an alternative list of questions for people who do not go to the library. So I'm actually going to answer those questions too. It says, if you don't go to the library, question number 1 is, why the heck not? So this is a very interesting question. I have to admit to having a bit of a love-hate relationship with the public library system. And for 3 reasons. Basically, the first one I've already mentioned, the whole fine issue. Back when the library systems that I belonged to charged fines, I found that for myself, because it was difficult to fit going to the library into my schedule, it was difficult to return books on time before I had fees. So I always had like these rolling fines at the library, and I ended up having to pay to use the library anyway. So at a certain point, I was like, this is ridiculous. Clearly, I am not responsible enough to use the library, so I am just not going to avail myself of this service. So that is one thing. And I said 3 reasons, but really there's only 2 reasons, but I guess the second one has multiple facets to it. So I'll try to explain it briefly. And also, this is more than likely going to be an unpopular opinion, so feel free to disagree. It's totally cool. I'm sure you will. I actually often find myself thinking very differently from the vast majority of people, so I'm used to it. Anyway, so I kind of disagree with public library being funded by tax money. I guess that's where I have a little bit of libertarian leaning on that in a couple of other areas. I just don't feel like it's an appropriate usage of taxpayers' dollars. And so I kind of disagree with it on that basis. And so there have been long stretches of time in my adult life that I have not used the library strictly on that principle alone. And I know that some people might come back at me and say, you can say that from a privileged position of not having to use the library in order to get access to the books you want. But the truth is actually that those time periods when I did not use the library on principle were because were times when actually I was living at what's defined as essentially the poverty level, or very, very close to it. There was a time when my husband and I, when we first had our kids, and I was doing some work from home, but mostly we were surviving on his income, which wasn't very large, and we were actually living in moderate income housing. So it was like prorated based on your income or whatever. So we were not, privileged or wealthy by any means, and we were struggling to get by. And I could have used the library as a source for books, but I wouldn't on principle. And then another time we had moved to Virginia, and then my husband lost his job, and then he was underemployed and he had a lot of health issues. So that was another stretch of time when we couldn't I mean, when I, we couldn't really buy books at all and didn't have any room in the budget for that. So, yeah, there have definitely been times when I couldn't afford my own books, but I still did not avail myself of the library. So that's kind of one reason why. Those are the two main reasons. There are times that I didn't because I didn't want to have to pay fines, because I thought that was stupid to have to pay. Well, it wasn't stupid of the library necessarily, but it was stupid from my perspective that I was spending money anyway, especially at times when I couldn't afford it. And then the other thing was, like, always underlying, there's been this thought that principally, like, if I think that my tax dollars shouldn't go to support the public library, then why am I using it? Now where I'm kind of falling is, well, my tax money does go, at the vast majority of my tax money goes to the public education system and the public library, to a much lesser extent, but still goes to that. And I don't use the public education system at all. And so most of my money is going to something that I don't get a direct advantage from. So, I might as well just use it. That's kind of where I'm falling right now. I just might as well get some use out of that money that I am flushing down the toilet. So those are my thoughts. And yeah, kind of thinking outside the box there, but that's the truth. But so a follow-up question to that is, then where do you get your books from? And so first of all, I have never been part of, but I love the idea of the concept of like a circulating library like they had back in the day. Like in when you read books in like Jane Austen's time, in the Regency era and Victorian era, like the Brontes, they belonged to a circulating library. And so it was privately owned, and like everybody paid a subscription. And so with their subscription, they were able to check out, a certain number of books as they came in. And I really think that that's a fabulous idea. I would be 100% behind that. I also, and I wish that it was more common nowadays. It's making a comeback. And there is, actually, I learned recently, there is a circulating library in Boston, I believe, that is to this day, is operating the same way, which I think is really awesome. And I think that there is a rise in private library collections being made available to local public for a subscription fee, which I think is great. I mean, it's kind of like, renting out your pool or renting your car or renting a room in your house, on a temporary basis to people who need it, which is, becoming a much larger and larger trend. I think that's great. I like the idea of doing that with books as well. So I really like that whole idea, 100% behind it for sure. But as for where I actually get my books from, I would get them from, and I do get them from yard sales, thrift stores, library book sales, etc. That you can get books for super cheap. If I'm looking for a particular book and I need a particular book, I always look first at like thrift books or some other used book site, because you can get a great deal and pay, less than half the price most of the time of a new book. So there are ways to get books extremely cheaply. I also borrow from friends. And also almost every school has a library, every college and university has a library. So if you are if you go to that school, or if you are a student or faculty at certain college or university, you can also avail yourself of those libraries. I have used school libraries, church libraries. I have been a member of in the past and have definitely utilized to one extent or another. So I've borrowed from my sisters, from friends, friends who know I like to read, all kinds of places. Nowadays, like on the Buy Nothing groups or on Facebook Marketplace, you can get books for cheap or free, all kinds of places to get books. Not always specifically the one you want. And there may sometimes be like a book that you actually need to read, and that, a library is the only place that you can source it, short of purchasing it yourself. But most of the time, most of the books that I really wanted to read, I have been able to read by borrowing them or getting them used or super cheap. Yeah, I've never actually, when I don't use the library, I don't honestly miss it very much. And sometimes, I also just do without a book. If there's a book that I want to read, but I don't want to spend the money on it, and no one I know has it, and it's just not available to me, then I just live without it. And I manage to survive. Question number 3. Have you ever had, or do you have a library card? Yes, I do. I've probably always been in possession of one. I just don't always use it. When was the last time you stepped foot into a library? Not that long ago, like a couple weeks maybe. But like I said, I mostly go in to pick up books that I have already reserved or to drop off books I've already checked out. I rarely browse in the library. This question was already answered. Have you ever been to an event at your library? And then finally, in this one, do you have a little free library, book box, or book swap where you live? Yes, I have multiple little free libraries. I don't know about like any places that have ongoing book swaps. I know like sometimes coffee shops and places like that will have book swap shelves. I don't know of any in my immediate area. Okay, and so then I was tagged in the Library Lovers tag by Alma at Alma's Book Journey. So thank you for tagging me, Alma. And she had been tagged by Tay, and I believe Tay had found this original tag that was done a long time ago, almost a decade ago, by Pie and Books. And I'm not even sure if that channel is still in operation, but you can watch Taylor's tag, and you can also watch Alma's tag and the Pine Books tag if you want, of the Library Lovers. But I'll go ahead and answer the questions now. Question number 1, I basically answered. How often do you visit your local library? Question number 2, are you the type of person who checks out more books than you know you can read, or are you someone who only checks out the exact amount of books you know you can read before they're due? And I check out more. You know, for someone who doesn't use the library that much, I always check out more than I can actually read. Absolutely. And that started when I was younger because my sisters worked at the library. The limit rolls and the fines did not apply to them, I think, or their family members. So we could check out as many books as we wanted, and we didn't have to pay fines for returning them late. So we may or may not have taken extreme advantage of that. Question number 4. Nope. Number 3. How old were you when you got your first library card? And I'm not exactly sure, but I was definitely in elementary school. I remember using the library in the 8, 9, 10-year-old range. And I had a library card, but I don't remember the exact age. Number 4. Do you go to your library looking for a particular book, or do you check out anything that piques your interest? So like I said, I mostly am just picking up what I found online and is available. But if I do find myself with extra time, I will sometimes wander through the new books section, or I'll check in the fiction section, just browse through it real quickly, especially the books that they have on display that I can look real quickly. And if there's something that catches my eye, or I'm like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to read that book, I'll pick it up. Question number 5, do you check out DVDs, audiobooks, etc.? Already discussed that. Question number 6, from what section of the library do you check out most of your books? And 90% of the time it's going to be fiction, the adult fiction section. I do also check out nonfiction books on a pretty semi-regular basis. That would be the next most. Well, maybe it's more like 60% of the one, 30% of the other, or 70-20, something like that. And then just a very small percentage occasionally from young adult or children's section, especially if my kids are wanting books and I'm getting books for them. In the past, there would have been a lot more children's books, especially back when I taught preschool and kindergarten. I would check out a lot of children's books. Question number 7, what is your favorite part of using your local library? And probably the book sales, honestly. Buying the books, because you can get some really fantastic deals, and it's just fun. It's fun. When I have time, that's another thing I do. If I'm at the library, I browse their book sales section. And when they have an actual book sale, I definitely go. I go to any library book sale that is accessible to me. And then question 8 is a bonus question, and to show your most recent library haul. So this isn't like from one visit to the library. These are just the ones that I currently have collected over the past several month to 6 weeks-ish that just have not been returned yet. And so first of all is Shadow in Moscow, which I've not read and I want to. So that's by Catherine Ray, and that's on my June TBR. And I just found out that I have British Booksellers by Christy Cameron waiting for me at the library as well, which I would either get those from Hoopla or from physical copies if the library has a physical copy. And I prefer to get the physical copy because they reduced the number on Hoopla to 6, which I still wouldn't get to, but you know, like just in case, you gotta keep your options open. And then before the coffee gets cold, I borrowed from the library, and I'm going to be returning that because I didn't finish it. And then this was Simple Green Pest and Disease Control, which I haven't read yet because I haven't had time. But it is something that interests me, and I want to learn more about that. And then I got this, How to Read a Book, the Classic Guide to Intelligent Reading, but I just picked it up at McKay's for very cheap, so I can return that and read it at my leisure. And then I have Fruit and Vegetables in Pots, which I'm currently trying to grow some plants from seed and failing. So last year we did successfully do tomatoes in pots. Well, I have in the past. I've successfully grown tomatoes and peppers, and I feel like 1 or 2 other things in pots. But I want to get back into it more. I just haven't. It's really hard because of this time of year is really hard for me because like April and May, when you're supposed to be doing all this stuff, I'm crazy busy with school and family life. It's just impossible to really put a lot of time into gardening. And that's when you need to be able to put time into it. Yeah, I haven't even got my annuals in the front flower beds yet. They're like sitting on my landing, waiting to be put to the soil. So yeah, time is an issue. All right, so I am going to tag someone. I am going to tag Renee at Beyond Books. I just met her the other day, and she seems to enjoy doing tags, but I do not believe that she has done either of these library tags. So Renee, you can pick which one of these tags you want to do. If you want to do either one of them, you don't have to. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments how you feel about my answers to the questions, particularly the controversial answer, and how you use your local library, and if you use it a lot or not. Tell me how you feel about library finds also.